congratulations. You've had a successful epiphany phase. You found somebody who wifed you up at the you stuck the landing, girls. All of you stuck the landing. And that's not my word. That's Del Rock, by the way. You stuck the landing. You had your hoe phase, you had your party phase, everything else, and you stuck the landing. Now, the problem is if you have the child before you get to the epiphany phase, what happens? I'm going to show you exactly what happens here. Now, let's move and push this into the stream. This is from, I forget the guy's name.
The best place to start to explain that is in a day and age where people are having kids later and later and later in life. You chose, as a ambitious person, as far as I can tell, to have kids in your 20s. So why don't we start there? How thoughtful was that? Was that accidental? Was it something you put a lot of thought into?
Oh, that's an interesting place to start. That is a very complicated story, actually. Uh, Scarlett was an accident. So I was in university. I'd done 2 years in psychology, and then I'd switched over to biomedical science, and I was in my second year. And I got pregnant, and I kept her because I couldn't emotionally handle any other option. And it was extremely stressful because I was 23 when I got pregnant, and my life plan was to have kids ideally before the age of 30. But I'm also, like you said, very career oriented, and I was in my second year of university, so that was not ideal for when to have a kid. But but I decided to keep her, and I ended up dropping out of university and then doing part-time work for my dad, and which turned into full-time work very rapidly when Scarlett was about 6 months old. But the choice to have, I didn't really feel like I had a choice. Like I ended up when I got healthy, I stopped taking all my medication, including birth control.
Because you were worried about what it was doing to you from a gut perspective?
Yeah, well, not even from a gut perspective, but also from a psychological perspective. Like my mom told me that when she'd gone on birth control, it had made her severely depressed, and she hadn't recognized that until she stopped taking it. And I kind of laughed that off, but I started taking birth control when I was 14, and I was severely depressed. So
Hoop earrings, duly noted. Thank you very much. Oh, by the way, this interview is with, what'd you say his name was? Tom Bilyeu. That's what it was. And this was from July 8th. I should have told you the date before I started this, but this was on July 8th of this year.
I thought, who cares if you add another pill on top of it? I'm already depressed, which was like an immature way of thinking about it, as a 14-year-old might. But when I was 23 and I stopped taking my medications and I got healthier, I was like, I don't want anything impacting my mental function. And so I stopped taking birth control just in case it was. And I do believe that I was having, I do believe it was causing depression, but it wasn't the only thing in my life that was causing depression at that point. But yeah, I did stop taking it, and that ended up resulting in Scarlett, who I'm thrilled to have, but it definitely put a bit of a kibosh on the direction I thought my life was going to take. However, it ended up not being a negative thing. It ended up being a positive thing, but it was scary.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff in that. So one,
put a kibosh on my personal life. Sound like killed a party? Sure does to me. Now, I'm not saying she's going to kill her child. Obviously, she's not. However, that is the motivation. That's what I'm talking about, is the hindrance factor. Now, Tom does her no favors by starting her out saying, well, you're an ambitious young woman. How did you choose to have a child too? Well, clearly not. She was a mistake. She was an oops. And what happens when you have an oops? When you're 23, 24 years old and you are at least an e-celebrity's daughter, yeah, you regret that decision probably to a greater or lesser degree. Now, of course, she's saying, oh, I love my daughter. And if you go and you look at her Instagram, she's very much, she uses the kid, by the way, as almost like an accessory. But let's continue.
Were you married at the time or not?
I was not.
And is Andre the father?
I was not married at the time. Yes. So Andre and I were dating for 8 months at that point. And at that point, I was 23. I was really looking into my health and trying to optimize that. And I wasn't really focused on a long-term relationship because I was 23 and I was focused on other things. And I was like, you know what? I have time to figure that out later. Like, I'll figure that out by the time I'm maybe 26 or 27 or 28 even. And I can start thinking about that. But I ended up having to think about that a lot.
Okay. We know this is bullshit. I'll explain to you why this is bullshit right here. This is self-rationalizing bullshit. This is making your necessity a virtue bullshit. And we'll see exactly why this is here in just a moment, but here you go.
Faster because Scarlett came around.
No, that's interesting. That puts a lot of pressure on a relationship, though. And when I think about, so I look at you, and I could be totally delusional. I don't know you well, but when I look at you, it seems like a lot of thought goes into the decisions that you make. And so as you approached marrying Andre, given the sort of complexities of having a child, did that weigh in the decision? Like, were you more prone to marry him because he was the father of your child? Or were you like, no, that doesn't matter?
Oh, no, 100%. I was really stressed out about being an unmarried mom. Like really
I'm sure
stressed
you
out
were.
and felt, societally pressured into it.
Really?
We moved. Oh yeah. And you know what? This was a bit skewed because if it was me now and I went back in time, I certainly wouldn't have felt that way.
Here we go.
But I'm much more confident now. At the time I was actually dealing with this gets complicated, serious SSRI withdrawal. So my anxiety was ridiculous. So I was thinking about a whole bunch of things that I shouldn't have been concerned about. And that most certainly influenced my decision making at the time.
Because you had an impending sense of doom?
Yeah, because I had an impending sense of doom.
Okay. Keep that. Write that down, children. Here we go. Hey.
Hello there, children. How's it going?
Write that down. Impending sense of doom. Write that down. Put that in your notebooks, kids. We're going to be coming back to that here very shortly.
For about, a year and a half, 2 years after I stopped taking SSRIs.
That is super interesting. So now you guys have obviously navigated those waters. You've been together for years. You're having a second child? Is that accurate?
Here we go.
That is not accurate. We are not. That may be happening in the future.
Okay,
but
so you're open to having a second child. I'd heard you in an interview say, we will definitely be having more, or I'm definitely going to have more. I think maybe the more accurate quote.
I'm definitely having more.
That was probably the more accurate quote, yes. We've been navigating. It's difficult because he's been with me through me coming off of psychiatric medication, which was a trip and a half that I would not recommend anybody go through the way I did. So he's been with me through that. He was with me through taking care of my dad in the last year and a half, and the trauma and stress that has to do with those experiences has been hard to navigate with the relationship, to say the least. It's been tricky.
So one thing I'd love to hear more about is the growing confidence. And I am really surprised. And again, this comes back to we're really just now getting to know each other, but I'm really surprised, given your public persona, that you felt societal pressure to get married or to not have a child out of wedlock. What was it? Just the judgment of it all, or something else?
Like, honestly, I think I wouldn't underestimate the SSRI withdrawal I had. I think that the anxiety and this horrifying impending sense of doom I had, like I said, for about 2 years after I stopped taking SSRIs, I think I was looking into aspects of my life to try and identify what was causing my reaction. Because when you get anxious, you try and identify what in your life is making you anxious. And so I had, my dad was randomly getting controversially famous, which was incredibly stressful for my family. So that was a real source of stress. And then I had a surprise pregnancy, which was a serious, real source of stress.
Surprise, you're pregnant. Oh my goodness, I can't believe it. That was a source of really existential stress for poor Michaela. Now, impending sense of doom. Make sure you keep that in your notebooks, because we're going to be returning to that one here in a moment, class. What'd you say here? He stuck with, yeah, this is Andre, her husband, or who's soon to be her ex-husband, by the way. Stuck with her when she was fat, sick, and depressed. She recovers and out earns him and then drops him. She is to daddy like Megan is to Harry. Yeah. Okay. I guess I can sort of see that connection right there. Webcam girls, thanks for your support one more time. You'd probably get a little bit further if there. Oops, wait, is it?
Bye.
Damn it.
Bye, Felicia.
There you go. That's for you. So, wow. So that's number one. So I wanted to start with like some of these videos. I got a couple of more videos here to sort of dig into, but I wanted to make sure that we started this out with her. I don't want to do her dirty. Okay. Like I said, it's not against her. I want you to see the process and the progress here. So when I talk about hypergamy and I talk about the party years, which, by the way, in case you're wondering what I'm getting into when I talk about the party years, this is the timeline right here. This is in my second book, Preventive Medicine, which is the sleeper hit, I think, of the Rational Male series. I mean, book one is the Bible, right? But I mean, I think it's pretty underrated as preventive medicine. This is in there. And I wrote this book from the perspective of what men can expect from women at various stages of their maturity. Now, if you look at the little orange area right here, it says party years all the way up to the epiphany phase and then into the transition. Party years are what women are now calling the hoe phase, which I would never call that. I would never use that. The 304 phase, right? So women are happy to talk about that. I've seen on Twitter how women are saying, I got to have a really good hoe phase before I have to check out. I mean, women, when it comes to open hypergamy, women are, I think right now there's just not even a sense of should I keep this secret or not. It's out in the open. And when you have that degree of attention coming in day after day, there's no reason to hide what your mating strategy actually is. So I pegged this back in 2014, 2015, when I published in 2015, the party years, which is now what would be comparable to the quote unquote hoe phase. And then there's the epiphany phase. Epiphany phase is anywhere between, say, 29 and 31 years old. I will actually give you a brief, I've got 2 essays on the epiphany phase. And I'm just going to read you just a little smattering of this right here. Any longtime reader of this blog will immediately associate this phenomenon with the epiphany phase. Women enter into when the reality of their lessened capacity to compete intrasexually with their younger sisters becomes unignorable. Generally, this phase comes at or around 29 to 31 years old. However, depending on circumstances, this may come sooner for women, those whose attractiveness is already understood to be suboptimal, and or women who make decisions such as our good friend Michaela here, and sometimes much later for others, women who bought into the lie that their attractiveness is subjective and indefinite. I've written many essays about this phase and dedicated 2 sections of preventive medicine to it. It's very recognizable and very understandable when you have a good grasp of how women prioritize the needs of their sexual strategy as they mature. The epiphany phase is really a woman's subconscious knowledge of the wall coming into her cognitive acknowledgement. Sorry, I know that's a mouthful. This is back when I used to write kind of like a little more cerebral, I think. However, and that's what I'm calling it. However, what's not easy to grasp is why a woman who's come into this phase would actually make it more difficult for her, for a prospective, long-term, parentally invested, hopefully idealized mate to become intimate with her. So now this was from, I guess I'll link this for you guys here. It's called The Epiphany Phase Revisited. I wrote this back in 2017, but the original Epiphany Phase, gosh, I can rewind the tape all the way back to my years at So Suave. So anyways, I'll link it in there. I'll put it down there once we're done. But that's the epiphany phase. And the reason I call it the epiphany phase, and by the way, this guy, I came up with that. That's mine. Okay. And maybe not kill the party, but certainly the epiphany phase is something that is a Rollo Tomasi original. But the epiphany phase is like once that woman gets to about 29, 30, 31 years old, that's when she realizes she has to check out and she has to get out of the party before the lights come on at the club. I saw somebody texted me that a little while ago. Thank you. But you got to stick the landing. You got to find the guy, and hopefully that guy has made the most of himself at 30 years old, and he's still blue pill. He's still ignorant of the game that he's actually in, and he's a nice guy. He's the guy that he's the Ross that Rachel says, "Wait for me until you're 30 years old." And if you're stupid enough to do that, you're the ideal. You basically completed that woman's mating strategy at that point. Well, that's becoming more and more difficult these days because of social media, because of things like the red pill. And it doesn't even necessarily have to be the red pill, right? It doesn't take Rollo Tomasi telling you this stuff for you guys to figure this out. Enough guys are. I just gave a name to it, the epiphany phase. Why do I call it the epiphany phase? Well, because at that point, it's the end of the party years. And the high from being 23 years old, such as Michaela Peterson. Congratulations, Michaela, by the way. You did actually reproduce at your most optimal fertility years possible. And now you're off to the next thing. And I'll tell you what. Now, here's the other part is when women come into that epiphany phase, the most common things you'll hear out of women is I'm done with the games. You'll see this in their Tinder profiles. You'll see it in their online dating profiles. I'm done with the games. If you're a game player, I swipe left or right or however you swipe to get away from it. If you're a game player, I don't want to have anything to do with you. I'm done with the party boys. I'm done with the jerks. I'm done. I had my fun in my party years. I had my fun, and now I want to get serious. Which is not really, ladies. If that's going to be on your dating profile, let me give you a piece of fatherly advice. Don't put "I've had my fun and I want to get serious." Don't do that. First of all, because you're probably on Tinder and no guys really cares one way or the other. However, don't put that on there, especially if you're looking for a long-term relationship. Get a guy in and then meet the guy and then explain things to him. Don't put that on. That's bad advertising. Because what you're saying is, yeah, I had a good hoe phase and now I'm done with the hoe phase. And the possibility of there being a lot of guys that I'm an alpha widow over is pretty up there. So don't do that. Leave that off. I should probably, I could do body language mastery. I could do like profile optimization for women. I really feel like I could do that. However, don't do that. And the reason why you don't do that is because what you're doing is you're admitting to the game. You're saying, I've had a lot of boyfriends in the past, blah, blah, blah. Whether it's true or it's not in your best interest to say, I had a good hoe face. Thank you, Torsha, very much for that.